Yay. Focus. Okay, today I'm going to do a landscape photography tutorial. That's what we're going to do, and I'm going to start with a disclaimer. Not everything I say in this video is a matter of fact. Photography is subjective and life is full of contradictions, as probably will be this video. So, tip number one in my landscape photography tutorial is the weather. The weather is so important, for crying out loud. Check those weather forecasts.
Bit breezy today.
There's a certain stillness in the air.
It's no accident that me and Murray got superb conditions when we were up in the Highlands of Scotland in my previous videos. You know, we kept our eye on the forecast, we watched it develop, we made a plan, and then we executed it in that window of good weather. Now, I appreciate that not everybody has the luxury of time, and sometimes you're in a location for a certain period. So in that instance, still obviously check the weather, but shoot to the conditions, you know? If hurricane force winds and rains are forecast, don't go up onto the mountains trying to get a big vista. Go down into the woodlands. So how to check the weather, and more importantly, how to interpret that weather into photography terms. I've got my phone here. I'm going to discuss a few apps and a few websites that I use. Now, let's discuss my trip to Scotland, where we've got beautiful weather. So if you're in the UK and you're going up into the mountains, the website I would use over any other is MWIS, which is Mountain Weather Information Service. And this is great. This gives you accurate weather forecasts for the mountain tops, wind, sunshine, visibility, and everything like that. Because if you're going to, I don't know, the Lake District, for example, and you think, oh, I'll check the weather in the lakes, and you check a weather forecast for Keswick. Keswick could be lovely, calm and sunny, but you know, 3,000 feet up in the mountains, it's a different story, so you need to check the mountain weather forecast. Another app that I use is called Clear Outside. This gives you a ton of information, but more importantly, it gives you your dew point and your humidity levels. YR is another fantastic app. I found this to be very, very accurate, and it actually gives you a really cool display on your screen, which I quite like. Meteo Earth is another fantastic app. It shows you cloud cover, wind and pressure charts, which are very, very useful when planning landscape photography shoots. Skippy Sky is a website. It's very basic, but that gives you an overview of the cloud cover similar to Meteo Earth, but what it does is it separates low cloud, middle cloud and high cloud. And I use all of this information in conjunction with the photographer's Ephemeris app, so I can see what the cloud's doing, if there are any breaks in the cloud, and if those breaks are going to let through light from the sun. And it's a very useful thing to do. So I guess the message here is, don't just rely on one source. You know, I cross-reference many apps, and then that just allows me to make a good educated guess as to what's going to happen that day or the next day. Okay, so interpreting all of this information, I mentioned humidity and dew point. Now, I'm not a weatherman, I'm not an expert, but as far as I'm aware, if you've got high levels of humidity and a high dew point, so we're talking late 90s to 100 and they're the same, then there's a very good chance that you're going to get mist. I mentioned cloud cover. So cloud cover, you get low cloud, middle cloud, high cloud. As a general rule, low cloud can really kill a scene. You know, it can snuff out any light and it can be miserable and horrible. But then again, low cloud, depending on the amount of cloud cover, can give you excellent drama, you know, moody skies, heavy rain showers, and you can get very dramatic images with low cloud cover. Middle cloud is, you're equally likely to get some drama in the sky, but then you also have a good chance of getting some nice colour and some nice light. And then high cloud is the daddy. High cloud is what really catches fire, because that, you know, that cloud base could be like 30,000-40,000 feet. And as the sun drops below the horizon, it's still all of that red light is bouncing off that high cloud, and it's generally when you see those burning red sunrises and sunsets, that's usually the sun reflecting off high altitude cloud. Pressure. Low pressure is always associated with unsettled conditions, rain showers, wind, generally miserable weather if you're having a picnic, but can be fantastic for photography. Break out the tent stop, get some motion in the clouds, pack your waterproofs, pack your umbrella. You could get rainbows. All of that's usually associated with low pressure. High pressure means everything's going to be settled, it's going to be still, there's a chance of cloud inversions, there's also a good chance of high altitude clouds catching all of that beautiful red light. So you're interested in landscape photography and you want to capture a beautiful hero image, something that's really going to pop. Well, you know, not everyone knows this, but those types of images almost always happen around sunrise and sunset. So you need to get up early and you need to stay out late. Okay, so my biggest tip, my biggest secret to those landscape photography images that everybody wants to get, that biggest tip, the biggest secret is that you have to be in it to win it. Sounds stupid, but it's no good just sitting there daydreaming about these images that you want to capture. You actually have to get out there day after day, time after time. Use all the weather apps and everything that I mentioned before to give you the best idea of when to go, but really there is no substitute for putting on your boots, getting out there every day. You know, even if all you achieve is to know that that location is no good, you tick it off your list, you don't bother going back there. Eventually, the more you go out, the more you practice, the more luck you'll get and the more images you'll capture. The best images I've ever photographed have been technically so easy. It's just been like, get the camera, click, job done. The difficulty was getting up early, having the motivation to go there, stand around in the freezing cold, hike for miles in the dark, wait out the rain. That is the most challenging part of landscape photography. Technically, it's easy. Let's talk about composition. Now, I can't tell you what to photograph. Only you can decide that. What I would say is, don't photograph images that are popular. Photograph what really, you know, things that mean something to you. So if you enjoy hiking and the outdoors, go and photograph on some mountain trail. If you find peace and solitude in the woodland, go into the woods and try some photography in there. If you're a beach bum, shoot seascapes. Do what feels good for you, because there is more to photography than just getting the images. It's about the whole experience. A few compositional tips. The first thing is balance. The first thing is a subject. Find a subject and make sure that you have that subject in your frame at the right time, so the right time of day, and when the weather conditions are good and fit that subject. Another tip is balance. Make sure that subject is balanced within your frame. You know, just look at all of the elements inside of your composition and make sure that it's not too heavy on one side, there's nothing really distracting on the other side. And here I am talking about subjects. Sometimes you don't even need a subject. You can take images that are full of negative space and have nothing but colour, texture and light. You know, those images I find beautiful and very peaceful. I'd also say with composition, less is more. So don't try and fill your frame with everything. You know, pick out certain parts of the landscape that are attractive to you and try and hone in on that. I think a single subject surrounded by negative space is going to be a far more impactful image than something that's cluttered and there's a lot going on. You know, really look at your composition before taking the photograph and just ask yourself, is anything in this composition distracting me? What bothers me about it? You know, that rock there or that telegraph pole in the corner, and check the edges of your frame and see if you can adjust your composition to eliminate those things. Other things with composition, look for S curves, look for Z shapes in the landscape, because they really help the viewer move through the image. This one sounds counterintuitive. Just because something's beautiful doesn't mean that it necessarily adds to your photograph. So here's an image that I took in Iceland, and this is a lovely waterfall with a river running through, and look at that sky. That sky was burning, it was on fire, and above my head and behind me was orange and red and purple and pink. It was phenomenal, and part of me wanted to get the 16mm lens out and just get the sky in and the waterfall, but by doing that I would have totally taken away from the true subject, the true interest in the image, which was the river and those waterfalls. You see, I didn't think that although the sky was beautiful, it wouldn't have added to my composition. So, you know, probably less than 10% of this image is that sky. And that can feel very counterintuitive at the time. but you know, you try not to be seduced by everything. And if you are seduced by a few things that don't work together as one image, take a couple of different photographs. Next lesson in landscape photography is your exposure. Check your exposure, check your histogram, and don't blow out your highlights. That's it, simple. Don't blow out your highlights, because you can't recover those blown out highlights. Whereas shadows, you can easily recover those. And if you find that your image has too much dynamic range and you can't get your highlights and your shadows in, just drop in a graduated filter to pull those highlights down. It really is quite straightforward. Let's talk about focus. I always get asked where to focus, how to get sharp images. It's really simple, don't overcomplicate it. If I have a clear subject in my image, I focus on that subject. Easy. If I don't have a clear subject, it's more of an open scene, I focus to infinity. Infinity is the furthest object away, so usually the mountains or the horizon, which is like, 50 miles away or something. Then, of course, if you have interest like 2 feet in front of the lens and 20 miles away from the lens and you want to get it sharp front to back, then I focus stack. If you don't know what focus stacking is or how to do it, just watch my video here. It's very, very straightforward. Tilt shift lenses are excellent for achieving the effect of infinite focus front to back, but all you're doing is shifting the plane of focus. So the area of depth of field, if you like, extends top to bottom rather than front to back. So if you've got any verticals in your shot, then they're going to be soft at the top and at the bottom. So focus is tricky. It's actually physically impossible to get perfect sharpness front to back. Camera settings. So I'm going to assume that you're shooting landscapes. You're not shooting nighttime images, because it's a whole different ballpark. But general landscapes, dusk, dawn, low light, whatever, mid light. My settings are always the same. They're always ISO 100 and anywhere between f9 to f11 is usually my ballpark f-stop, and then my shutter speed, whatever it wants to be. It's always irrelevant. The only time that shutter speed is not irrelevant is if you have moving subjects in your frame, such as breaking waves or moving trees in the wind, rivers, waterfalls, things like that. Then shutter speed becomes very important, and your priority should go from ISO f-stop shutter speed to shutter speed f-stop ISO, I think. No, shutter speed, ISO, f-stop. That's how I prioritize it, because a 100th of a second image of a wave looks vastly different to a 1 second image of a wave. And now the subject that has been worrying me the most is gear. That's right, we're going to talk about gear. So if you're easily offended, look away now. Worry more about the lens choice than the camera choice. You'd be surprised, there aren't any. I don't think there is a bad camera on the market today. You'd be surprised at how many cameras share the same sensor. So for me, it's definitely image quality all comes from the lens. And a lot of these fancy cameras, what you're paying for is features and stuff that landscape photographers don't. I think landscape photographers are the simplest of all photographers. We don't need all the bells and whistles that cameras come with these days. Dual pixel autofocus? Not really, I manually focus. What about dual pixel shift? No, what is that? GPS? Anyone? I've never used GPS. I get it, I understand it, but I've personally never used GPS. 56,000 autofocus points all over no, don't need them, because again, manual focus. You see, all we really need is a good sensor and a good processor. So here's a hard truth, and people may disagree, but generally speaking, the more expensive the lens, the better quality of image you're going to get. You see, the image is really made, well actually no, the image is made here. But it's the lens that puts the image together. So there is usually, there is a huge difference between a kit lens and a professional lens, and it's sad because professional lenses are ridiculously expensive. But what I would say is to spend, if you have a budget for a new camera system, a new camera setup, prioritize that budget on the lens and not the camera body. Lenses hold their value. Manufacturers don't bring out lenses every 9 months and make the other lenses obsolete. A lens lasts pretty much forever, whereas camera bodies, they're always changing, they're always renewing, they're always getting updated. So definitely prioritize your lens over your camera body. Get a tripod, get a good tripod. You know, cheap tripods are fine until it gets a bit windy. And if you're doing landscapes, it's gonna get windy. In terms of tripod heads, I'm a fan of like a 3-way ball head, and it should be Arca Swiss compatible. Cheap tripod heads have a tendency to slip. That's where the plate on the camera doesn't, you know, it starts to twist. So if you're doing a vertical exposure and you've got your camera attached to your tripod head, the lens will slowly bring it down. That's called slipping. And cheap tripod heads tend to slip. They're not great. I would advise getting an L bracket. L brackets are superb. You can pick them up for like 20 or 30 pounds, and it just gives you the ability to instantly switch from horizontal to vertical. Another thing I'd say about your camera gear is if you're just getting into this, buy old, buy second-hand. It'll be much cheaper. And then all of the money that you've saved by buying old and second-hand gear, get that money and use it to go on a trip. Buy a plane ticket, buy a train ticket, buy a bus ticket. Go somewhere new, go somewhere inspirational, go somewhere that you're going to remember for life. Shooting locally is fantastic, and it's great to get those original images, and it should be practiced on a day-to-day basis, but you can't beat a dedicated photography trip to a foreign and faraway location to really get the juices flowing. You know what I mean? I love to travel. Processing, so yeah, you like what you like, right? You do what you do, you have a vision, and I'm not going to tell anybody how they should process their images. I think photography is an art form, and you know, do what makes you feel good. But what I would say is, if you go out and shoot a beautiful landscape in perfect conditions, you don't need to process that image, really. You know, nature has done all the Photoshop work for you. So in good light with good subject and a well executed, well exposed photograph, when I whack that into Lightroom, I don't know, blacks, white levels, tweak my white balance, a little bit of sharpening, and that's it, I'm done. I find that the best images need the least amount of processing. So there it is, my very own landscape photography tutorial. I hope you've taken something away from this, and if you are new to this channel, you can go and watch all of my back catalogue of videos and see how often I don't listen to my own advice. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.